Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. I am Kris. Coke's secret recipe is the world's biggest Psyop. This is the Fat Files. Click on that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, helps out tremendously. If you want to donate to the channel and request a video, click on the thanks button and then request a video, and your name sponsors that video. Just a second. All right, sorry about that, dog. Okay, well, let's get into the world's biggest Psyop.
You know it's going to be a good video, and I am legitimately worried about getting sued. Today we're talking about the biggest, most successful Psyop of all time when a Confederate colonel got wounded on the battlefield, got addicted to morphine, so in order to overcome his morphine addiction, created a new medication made out of wine, caffeine, and cocaine that he would later market as a soft drink that would become the most popular soda of all time, Coca-Cola. I can feel the cease and desist already, but we're going to get into it right after word from our sponsor.
Delete me.
What are you hell on? They make selling and delete me, broker. You can actually becomes more to begin with. Brokers and got that would have $6 a month. The video years old who would later go on to become John Pemberton. And leave me a try. I'm going to have a link and a discount code down below. Let's get back to the video. All right, our story begins with John Pemberton, a man that received his medical degree at the age of 19 years old, who would later go on to be a colonel in the Civil War and receive a saber wound at the Battle of Columbus and subsequently get addicted to morphine. Being a doctor, John realized that being addicted to morphine was not ideal, so he needed to find an alternative, and the one thing he found that worked was a cola wine called Vin Mariani. Now, coca wine at this point in time was a pretty popular product. It was exactly what it sounds like. It was wine mixed with coca leaves, and coca leaves is what you derive cocaine from. I know what you're wondering. How much party powder are we putting inside of this wine? Great question. Well, Vin Mariani, for example, was approximately 7.2 milligrams of cocaine per fluid ounce, and a bottle was about 25 ounces for about a total of 180 milligrams of Colombian nose torque.
Why don't you explain this to me like I'm 5?
Again, milligrams not super helpful in trying to figure out how much yayo they're actually putting inside the wine, so I'll put it to you this way. The devil's dandruff is not just an illegal street drug, it is a medication that is used in the medical industry for certain medical procedures, and according to the standards of those procedures, the maximum dose that you should give someone is approximately 160 milligrams. And according to Google, the average recreational dose is approximately 30 to 70 milligrams, so it's safe to say they're putting a lot of Peruvian marching powder inside of the wine. And this apparently helped John Pemberton with his morphine addiction for obvious reasons.
So you may want to ask your doctor about a little bump.
So after a while, John is like, you know what? I should make my own version of this. I should make an even better version. You know what this needs? It needs caffeine in it as well.
I will not make garbage. We will produce a chemically pure and stable product that performs as advertised.
So he essentially makes a knockoff of Vin Mariani's coca wine and then adds cola nuts to get caffeine in there as well. And his recipe has about 40 milligrams of caffeine and about 9 milligrams of nose beer. Coca leaves, coca, cola nuts, cola, this is where we get Coca-Cola from.
It all makes sense now.
So he brings Coca-Cola to market, marketing it as a medication in 1866, and within a matter of months, the county that he resides in, Fulton County out of Atlanta, passes a temperance legislation that they are going to ban alcohol, so he can no longer have wine inside of Coca-Cola, so he has to switch over and changes it to carbonated water. The problem is, taking the wine out and adding carbonated water makes the entire thing taste like crap, and nobody's gonna wanna drink it, so he adds a shit ton of sugar.
Sugar. More.
So he takes that to market and starts selling that as an over-the-counter medication to treat general exhaustion and headaches, because apparently it's hard to have a headache when you can't feel your face. So he sells that for a couple of years, and then he is diagnosed with an aggressive form of stomach cancer that rapidly brings about the end of his life. But right before his passing, he determines that his son does not want to take over the family business, so he sells it to a local Atlanta pharmacist by the name of Asa Chandler for approximately $300, which is about 10 grand today.
Damn good deal.
Now, when Asa takes over the company, they are not making a lot of money. They're not selling a whole lot. That's why it was sold for such a low price. But he gets to marketing right away. He uses his pharmacy. He reaches out to all of his pharmacist buddies, gets the names and addresses of every single person that's getting any type of medication, and just starts sending them coupons for a free sample of Coca-Cola. And he does this in the hope that it would bring about a new wave of lifelong customers to Coca-Cola, and it was definitely him operating on blind hope and faith, not him being a pharmacist, knowing for a fact that he was giving out coupons for free caffeine and cocaine-laced sugar water. So obviously that went great, got a whole new wave of customers, at which point he realizes, you know what, I'm gonna quit marketing this as an over-the-counter medication, and I'm gonna start marketing it as like a daily soft drink that anybody can drink just whenever they want as a refreshment. You know, a little pick-me-up.
A little bump.
Now, to be fair, this is not unique. There's like 50 other products on the shelf at this point in time, all basically the same exact thing. The difference is Asa Chandler decides that he's going to take a bunch of his profits and he's going to use that in marketing. There's banners, billboards, magazine ads, they're all over the place. And then since he's now a soft drink and not a medication, he doesn't actually have to market all the ingredients in his product, and he just kind of like conglomerates all of the secret recipe and labels it as Merchandise 7X, and it becomes Coca-Cola's secret recipe, which also helps with marketing because you get to say, I have a secret recipe and nobody else is like us. Everybody wants our secret recipe.
The most important ingredient of all, 4 heaping pounds of freshly ground.
I warned you.
And in doing that, Coca-Cola becomes the name brand popular version of all these products, and that's the one that succeeds the most. So by the 1890s, things are going great for Coca-Cola, and then in 1895, they revolutionized marketing by coming out with a new marketing campaign known as the Coca-Cola Girls. Basically, they figured, you know what would go great with our party powder drink? Attractive females. This is one of the first cases of sex sells ever used. Now to us, this seems obvious, but this is like the first time this has ever happened. So at the time, this was like a stroke of genius that would go on to become one of the standards of marketing for the rest of forever. And from here, they just keep going. They just keep putting more and more of their profits back into marketing. When radio becomes popular, they've got ads all over the radio. When TV becomes popular, they've got ads all over the TV. They start working with actors and famous athletes. Coca-Cola is absolutely everywhere. But then they experience kind of a setback because by the early 1900s, the United States government is really cracking down on, I'm running out of euphemisms for cocaine, nose candy. They're really cracking down on nose candy. And this in large part is kind of fueled by racism. There's literally a New York Times article that I'm not even gonna read the title of that goes on to claim that when a black man takes cocaine, he becomes impervious to bullets. I'm not joking, here's the article. So now Coca-Cola's gotta take the booger sugar title of that goes on to claim that when a black
We're gonna read that.
man takes cocaine, he becomes impervious to bullets. I'm not joking. Here's
You know what? It'd just be easier if I just moved my goddamn self out of the picture. But the drug produces several other conditions that make the fiend a peculiar. I can't say the word now. Peculiarly. Doesn't even sound right. Dangerous criminal. One of these conditions is a temporary immunity to shock, a resistance to the knockdown effects of fatal wounds, bullets fired into vital parts that would drop a sane man in his tracks. Why am I glitching here? Thank you. Would drop a sane man in his tracks, fall to check the fiend, fail to stop his rush or weaken his attack. Okay. A similar fortification against these conditions seems to be produced in the cocaine sniffing. Oh! Yeah, that's the N-word. The chief was informed that a I keep wanting to say hitherto, but I know that's not right. Man, the language back then was very difficult to read. In a cocaine frenzy, had attempted to stab a storekeeper and was at a moment engaged in beating up the various members of his own household. Wow, so the guy can go home and beat up people and stab a storekeeper. Okay then.
the article. So now Coca-Cola's got to take the booger sugar out of the secret recipe, but guess what? So does everybody else. So Coca-Cola isn't really affected and they remain the dominant actor in the soft drink arena.
I am invincible!
So by the 1920s, they're crushing it. They've got the entire market on lock, and they're like, who do we target next? Let's target kids. If we get them hooked while they're young, while their brains are still malleable and squishy, we'll have lifelong customers. So by the 1920s, they start associating themselves with Santa Claus. Now, fast forward like 20 years, all the kids that grew up on Coca-Cola and Santa Claus are now getting involved in World War II and have to get shipped off to war. And at this point in time, Coca-Cola is all over the planet, including Germany. Coca-Cola is literally Adolf Hitler's favorite drink at this point in time. But after Pearl Harbor and Germany declares war on the United States of America, obviously America is no longer going to be doing trade with Nazi Germany, so Germany can no longer get Coca-Cola. I don't know what you're thinking. If there's already Coca-Cola plants in Germany, why can't Germany just seize the Coca-Cola plants and continue making their own version of Coca-Cola? Well, because the way this works is the raw condensed syrup that makes up Coca-Cola when added with carbonated water is all made in the United States, and then it is shipped all over the world to bottling plants where they mix it with the carbonated water and bottle it. So they actually don't know how to make the concentrated syrup because it's a secret recipe. So once they cut off the supply of concentrated syrup, they can no longer make Coca-Cola. So these bottling plants in Germany need to come up with their own version of Coca-Cola, and they don't know what they're doing, so they just start using a bunch of food waste like extra fiber and stuff left over from fruit, and they end up making a fruitier version of Coca-Cola that ends up being called Fanta, and this is where Fanta comes from. Now, back on the American front, they're starting to ration things, and one of the biggest things that gets rationed is sugar, so Coca-Cola ends up, paying a bunch of politicians and then going over to these rationing boards and are like, hey, Coca-Cola is essential, you can't cut our sugar ration, and thanks to paying off politicians and also everybody loving Coca-Cola at this point in time, the government agrees, so Coca-Cola is allowed to keep putting just as much sugar into their drink as they always have, and most other brands are forced to cut back on the sugar, making Coca-Cola by far and away the best soda around.
Sugar! Need sugar! Hey, they're not riding the white horse anymore.
And then Coca-Cola has a stroke of genius. I don't know if they intended it to work out this way, but it did. They basically come out and say, hey, we support the American troops. We're going to guarantee that any American service member, no matter where they are in the world, can get themselves a cold Coca-Cola for the same 5 cents. We are literally willing to lose money on every single soda if it means getting these guys a taste of home. Now, Coca-Cola is supporting the troops. The American people love it. The government loves it. And Coca-Cola approaches the government and is like, hey, it's getting awfully expensive getting Coca-Cola all the way around the planet in the Pacific theater and the European theater. How would you guys feel about helping fund us build some more bottling plants out in more remote locations? So the US government and taxpayers essentially fund the building of 65 Coca-Cola bottling plants all over the world. Now, this does several things. A, it galvanizes the support of this entire generation that they now love Coca-Cola because it was the one thing they got to taste when they were away from home for 4 years fighting in World War II. And two, it exposes the rest of the world to Coca-Cola because now the American troops are drinking it and they're giving it out to all these other civilians and all these other territories that they're occupying, giving it even further reach all over the planet. Okay, if you're not picking up what I'm putting down, I'm trying to tell you that Coca-Cola has just convinced the American taxpayer to fund their global expansion while the United States military turns into the biggest sales force on the planet. So World War II ends, Coca-Cola resumes control of all the bottling plants that were captured by Nazi Germany, and now they have a new popular soda known as Fanta. On top of that, they're more popular than ever. They are galvanized with the greatest generation because Coca-Cola was the official soda of World War II. Time passes. By the 1950s, 1960s, studies are coming out saying like, hey, maybe drinking caffeinated sugar water is bad for you if you're drinking 12 of these things a day. So Coca-Cola wanting to kind of pivot a little bit is like, okay, well, we should get into the healthier drink market. What's something healthy? Fruit juice. What's that super popular brand that was developed in World War II to help soldiers get vitamin C? Minute Maid. They buy out Minute Maid and now they own that too. And this is where the psyop really begins because as time passes, it becomes more and more apparent that soda actually is not that healthy for you. And because of that, the rules on how you're allowed to market and what you're allowed to say get more and more strict, particularly in marketing to children. So Coca-Cola's like, fuck it, I'm gonna find a loophole. We're just gonna spend $750 million and we're gonna buy out Columbia Pictures in 1982. And then all the movies that come out of this major production studio are all gonna feature Coca-Cola in subliminal advertisements. Okay, you think it was a coincidence that Ralph Macchio was drinking Minute Maid at breakfast with his mom, and then when he's training in the kitchen with Mr. Miyagi, he's drinking an ice cold Sprite, also a Coca-Cola product? Absolutely not. It's actually documented that Ralph Macchio was mad at how much product placement that Coca-Cola was making him do in that movie, so he tried to conceal the fact that he was drinking a Sprite, and Coca-Cola and the studio made him refilm that scene and show the Sprite for a certain amount of time in that particular scene. You think it was a coincidence that Ghostbusters and Coca-Cola marketed so hard together that that if you drank enough Coca-Cola, you could literally win the Ghostbusters mobile? Absolutely not. The entire thing, all of the movies that came out in the 1980s out of Columbia Pictures was one giant psyop to get you to drink Coca-Cola. It was so well known in Hollywood that Clint Eastwood refused to have any Coca-Cola products in any of his movies because he was mad that they cast Ralph Macchio as the Karate Kid and not his son.
Idiots.
And the marketing doesn't just stop there, right? They are targeting kids all over the place. Officially, according to their policy, they don't market to anybody under the age of 13, which you can make an argument for with movies. However, I don't think you can really make an argument for that when you're putting your branding on a bunch of toys all over the toy section, right? They're on trucks, they're on Barbie dolls, they've got game cell phone apps, they're sponsoring kids' sports teams, they're all over amusement parks, they're absolutely everywhere. This psyop is so effective, it literally changed the global perception of polar bears, okay? Polar bears are not friendly, cuddly animals that run around the Arctic chugging Coca-Cola. Polar bears are one of the most dangerous apex predators on the planet and one of the only animals known to actively hunt people. Buh! You're exaggerating, it's not that big of a deal. Buh! No, I'm not, and I can prove it, okay? Because by the 1980s, Coca-Cola and Pepsi were like at the pinnacle of their competition. They had just had their race to the bottom to see who could offer the product the absolute cheapest, and then a lot of people think they engaged in price fixing because they had a meeting behind closed doors, allegedly, and after that meeting, they both decided to take their products back to the normal price and just compete with normal marketing tactics. And what Pepsi did is they had the brilliant idea that they were just gonna compete on taste. What they did is they had a bunch of blind taste tests studies, and those studies showed that when you didn't know what the branding was, more people preferred Pepsi than any other flavor. Coca-Cola immediately fired back saying that's not true, that's a lie. They then conducted their own blind taste test studies, and holy shit, that wasn't a lie. People actually do prefer the taste of Pepsi. So Coca-Cola went ahead and developed a new flavor that outcompeted the original Coca-Cola and Pepsi in the blind taste test trials, and then they launched the new Coke. And when Coca-Cola discontinued the original Coke and had their new flavor of Coke come out that was supposed to be better in every single way, people were absolutely fucking pissed. The psyop was so effective over generations that it had convinced people that Coca-Cola wasn't just a product that could be improved upon. No, Coca-Cola was Coca-Cola. It was a fixture in the American community. It was literally like a family relative and you can't mess with it, okay? It would be like if a scientist was like, hey, you know your cousin Jimmy? Great news. I've invented a new Jimmy that's better in every way. And you're like, that's great, but where the fuck is Jimmy? That motherfucker's not Jimmy.
I am telling you right now, that motherfucker back there is not real.
So Coca-Cola just takes an absolute beating in the marketplace, okay? People are furious that they've changed Coca-Cola. So eventually they revert back and it's a huge PR thing. Like they finally brought Coca-Cola back and their sales absolutely skyrocket, which almost makes you wonder if the entire thing was planned. And if it was, it would be the greatest marketing ploy of all time, but we can't prove that. But what it does prove is that Coca-Cola's marketing psyop
I don't think it was planned.
over the course of generations was so outrageously effective that they could literally give the customer a better product in every way for the exact same price. And not only would the customers still prefer the original Coca-Cola, they would demand it. And you can see it again with the secret recipe. The secret recipe is not secret. It's literally on Wikipedia. Yet Coca-Cola still has this like fancy ass vault with a palm scanner and an eye reader and like smoke and red lights and mist showing off where they hide the secret recipe. Everybody knows what the secret recipe is. All you got to do is Google it. It's right there for the taking, but nobody cares because it's still Coca-Cola. You could literally open up your own soda shop today with the exact same product as Coca-Cola, and guess what? Nobody's gonna drink your shit because you're not Coca-Cola. You're not Cousin Jimmy. You're not a member of the family. You haven't been psyoped into existence for the last 4 generations. Also, that's not true. You can't just recreate Coca-Cola because Coca-Cola has an exclusive deal with the Steffen Company, which is the only company allowed by the DEA to import coca leaves and de-cocainify them. So you wouldn't be allowed to get de-cocained coca leaves to put in your drink anyways. But my point still stands. Even if we lived in magical fairy tale land where you could get the coca leaves and you could somehow make the exact same product and somehow magically sell it for the exact same price despite Coca-Cola's overwhelming manufacturing and distribution capabilities, you would still fail outrageously for no reason other than the fact you're not Coca-Cola, because they have the greatest psyop of all time on their side and they will always win because of it. And we know this because there's been multiple times throughout history, the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, there's always somebody coming forward saying, we found Coke's secret recipe in some old document that we found in an auction house and blah, 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 blah. And every single time Coca-Cola just comes out and says, that's not the secret recipe. Nuh-uh.
Yeah-huh. Yeah-huh.
Is it the recipe that makes up Coca-Cola? Yeah, it absolutely is. But it's not the secret recipe, because the secret recipe is not the chemicals and the oils and the coca leaves that Coca-Cola puts inside of their drink. The secret recipe is the marketing itself. The marketing that has gone on for generations and was so outrageously effective that it went from marketing into a psychological operation. That is the secret recipe of Coca-Cola, not the ingredients inside of it. And you wanna know who knows this? Pepsi knows this, because there was a disgruntled Coca-Cola employee that got a hold of executives over at Pepsi and offered to sell them Coca-Cola's secret recipe, but Pepsi realizes that it's not what makes up Coca-Cola. It's Coca-Cola's marketing and Psyop itself that is the secret recipe. So instead of trying to buy the ingredient list that goes into Coke, they turn that motherfucker over to the FBI. So yeah, in conclusion, Coca-Cola has the most successful marketing of all time. I don't know where the line is that separates marketing and psychological operation, but I feel fairly certain in saying Coca-Cola passed it a while ago. Coca-Cola's marketing is so good, they literally took a Confederate colonel's recipe for his medication to help him overcome his morphine addiction and turned it into the most recognizable beverage and one of the most recognizable brands, period, on the planet. Branding that was so successful that it transcended being a product and it became its own entity, meaning that if you were to actually try to change it, you would be fundamentally changing what that product itself was. And in that, there's never been a better demonstration of how overwhelmingly effective just marketing can be. Marketing can be so effective that it is the secret recipe. Thank you for watching. Best way to support the channel.
Yeah, I remember the woman trying to sell the recipe to Pepsi, and Pepsi did the right thing, because if you flip it, would Pepsi want their secret getting out and being bought by another company? You would hope that company would do the right thing, because in the end, they may be competitors, but they are all doing the same thing. You know, so you have to protect one another in that aspect, even if you don't want to. Yeah, that was pretty good. I enjoyed that. I didn't really get to add much, but I was just enjoying it. So apologies for that. I'm going to end it here. Until next time, have a good day. Have a good night.